Hey guys. All right, let's jump into another lesson. This one is going to be on converting between fractions and decimals. So our learning intention today is to be able to convert between different forms of rational numbers. You should be able to, by the time you finish this section, explain the difference between terminating and repeating decimals. You should be able to write fractions and mixed numbers as decimals, and you should be able to write decimals as fractions and mixed numbers. So this first section is called your steps to success. So the first one is fraction to decimal. Step one, you're going to divide the numerator by the denominator. So if I was writing this writing fractions as a decimal, say this 2/5, I would write it in long division form like this. So my numerator is going to go on the inside, the denominator goes on the outside. So my example, 2/5, so 2 divided by 5 becomes 0.40, or we would call this 40 hundredths. Okay, that's it. That's how you change a fraction to a decimal. Okay, now decimal to fraction, couple more steps here. So step one, you're going to determine what place value the decimal ends in. So I put a place value chart here. Here's where your decimal point would be. If you have one place after it, it's the tenth place. Two places after, hundredths. Three places after, thousandths. So that's why this one, instead of just saying 0.40, I would say that this is 40 hundredths because it is in the second decimal place. Okay, so that's step one. You just have to determine where is it. Step two, you need to write the decimal number as a fraction over that place value. So if we determined that this is hundredths, I would write this, if I was converting it back, I would write this as 40 over 100 because that's in the hundredths place. So in this example, we have just 0.4, which means it's in the tenths place, or we would call this 4 tenths. So then I would write the 4 over, what's the place value, tenths, 4 over 10, and then I would simplify that down to 2/5. Okay, so, and that's our step three, simplify. Okay, any questions about this? I want you to star it, write some questions, be ready to ask them, because if you have a question, likely somebody else has a question. All right, let's move on to the next side. So we have some new vocab to learn this week, terminating decimal and repeating decimal. So terminating decimal, if you know what terminating means, terminate means to end. Terminating decimal is a decimal that ends. Pretty simple, right? Here's some examples of terminating decimals: 1.5, negative 0.25, and so forth and so on. If you do the work to change a fraction into a decimal and you're doing the long division and it ends, then it's a terminating decimal. Now, if it's a repeating decimal, that is a decimal that has a pattern that repeats. Seems pretty logical, right? Repeating decimal repeats. So in this example, I have negative 1.333. Now, as you can see, the 3 is just going to continue to repeat. So I would actually write it as negative 1.3, and I put this bar notation over the top of the 3. And that shows me that this number is going to continue to repeat. Same thing here. We have 0.151515. It's going to keep going on forever and ever. We could just keep going with our long division. But instead, once I notice that it repeats, I'm just going to write 0.15 or 1500ths. And then I would put the bar notation over the 1 and the 5 because both of those numbers are repeating. Okay, so the notation has to go over all of the numbers that repeat. Okay, any questions about those? Make sure you write them so that we can talk about it. And I have some examples here for you, writing negative 2 and 1/4 as a decimal, writing 5/11ths as a decimal. It shows you some long division, how you would get that This one is not a repeating decimal, so this is terminating, but here is a repeating decimal. And as you see here, we had 5.0, so how many times does 11 go into 50? It goes in 4 times, and then you keep going down. Oh, look, we have the same problem here. We're just going to it's just going to continue to repeat. So that's called a repeating decimal. And then we just stop there, put the bar notation at the top of the 4 and 5, and move on. Okay. Here's some guided practice for you. Let's do these ones together, and then you're going to do the try it section by yourself. All right. So if it's 43 hundredths, anytime that I'm going to change a fraction to a decimal, I can do the long division, but I do know because of this, because I know where the spots are in my place value chart. If it's 43 over 100, which would give me 2 spaces. So I know that this is going to be written as 0.43 because that is 43 hundredths. But if I didn't know that, I would write it out as long division. And I would say, okay, how many times does 100 go into 43? It doesn't. So then I put the 0 there. So then I'm going to bring down a 0. I'm just going to put it right here. How many times does 100 go into 430? Well, it goes in 4 times, leaving us with 30, but I'm going to bring down another 0. How many times does 100 go into 300? It goes in 3 times. And is there anything left over? No. So this is a terminating decimal. It does not continue on. And then I have 1/4. If I'm thinking 1/4, okay, 1/4, I think in quarters, 25, 50, 75, 100. I know that this is going to be 0.25, but if I didn't know that, I'm going to write it out. How many times does 4 go into 1? It doesn't. Then I'm going to bring down the 0. How many times does 4 go into 10? It goes in 2 times, leaving us with 2. Bring down a 0. How many times does 4 go into 20? It goes in 5 times. Is there anything left? No. So this is also a terminating decimal, and it's just 0.25. Decimal to fraction, I am going to take the decimal and I'm going to put it over its place value. So this would be tenths. This is hundredths. So I know that this is going to be 57 over 100. This cannot be simplified down. So I'm just going to leave it just like that. This one, 0.8, or it's written as 8/10, which then, by being able to say that it's written as 8/10, tells me what the fraction is. It is 8/10, because this is the tenths place. This can be simplified down. I'm going to put 2's into each of these numbers, so it's going to become 4/5. All right, so this is your section. I want you to try it. Make sure you get this completed. This is part of the notes. All right, bring any questions you might have when we do the recap.